My name is Ava and I'm 29 years old. When I was just a baby, my mother Karen gave me up for adoption, choosing to start a new family without me. I was blessed with amazing adoptive parents who loved me unconditionally until a tragic accident took them from me at 16. When I became an orphan and needed her most, Karen refused to take me in. She looked me in the eyes and said I wasn't her responsibility. But life has a strange way of coming full circle. Before I share how my birth mother came back into my life decades later, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe to join others who've found strength in difficult family journeys. I grew up in a cozy 3-bedroom house in suburban Boston with my parents James and Margaret Wilson. Some of my earliest memories are filled with laughter and warmth. Dad would swing me around in the backyard until we both got dizzy and collapsed on the grass giggling uncontrollably. Mum would bake chocolate chip cookies every Sunday and I always got to lick the spoon. They read to me every night before bed, sometimes the same story 3 or 4 times, because I insisted. They never complained. When I was about 4, I remember sitting at the kitchen table drawing with my crayons while Mum prepared dinner. I looked up at her and then back down at my family portrait. "Mommy, why does my hair look different than yours and Daddy's?" I asked. Mum put down her knife and wiped her hands on her apron. She came over and sat beside me, gently tucking a strand of my dark curly hair behind my ear. "Because you are special, sweetheart. Everyone's hair is different, just like everyone's smile is different." I accepted this answer easily. I was too young to question it further. But as I got older, I noticed more differences. My skin was a shade darker than my parents'. My eyes were deep brown, while Mom had bright blue eyes and Dad had green ones. In family photos, I stood out. When relatives visited, I didn't look like any of them either. I was 10 when they finally told me the truth. We were sitting in our living room after dinner. They turned off the television, which immediately signaled something serious was about to happen. "Ava, sweetheart," Mom began taking my hand in hers. "There's something important we want to talk to you about." Dad moved to sit on my other side. "We've been waiting until you were old enough to understand." My heart started racing. Was someone sick? Were we moving? Were they getting a divorce, like my friend Jasmine's parents? "You know how much we love you?" Mum continued, her voice gentle but slightly trembling. "More than anything in the world," Dad added. "The thing is, Ava," Mum said, "we didn't give birth to you. You came to us through adoption when you were just a tiny baby." The word adoption hung in the air. I knew what it meant from movies and books, but I'd never applied it to myself. "So you're not my real parents?" I asked, my voice small and confused. Dad's eyes grew watery. "We are your real parents in every way that matters. We've loved you, cared for you, and raised you since you were 6 weeks old. But there was another woman who gave birth to you. Your biological mother was young," Mum explained. "She wasn't ready to be a parent. She made the difficult but loving decision to place you with a family who could give you everything you needed. And that was the luckiest day of our lives," Dad said, squeezing my shoulder. I remember feeling numb, then confused, then sad, then curious, all in waves. Questions tumbled out. Who is she? What's her name? Why didn't she want me? Do I have a biological father too? Do I have brothers and sisters? Do they know about me? My parents answered what they could. My birth mother's first name was Karen. She was very young when she had me. They didn't know much about my biological father. They didn't think Karen had other children at the time, but they couldn't be sure. "She didn't give you up because she didn't want you," Mum emphasized. Sometimes people aren't in a place in their lives where they can be good parents, and they make the brave choice to let someone else take that role. That night, after they tucked me in, I heard Mum crying in their bedroom. The door was closed, but her sobs carried through the hallway. Dad's low, comforting murmurs followed. "She thinks we're not her real parents now," Mum cried. "Give her time," Dad replied. "She knows how much we love her. That won't change." In the days that followed, I vacillated between wanting to know everything about my biological parents and wanting to pretend the conversation never happened. My parents were patient, answering my questions when I had them, giving me space when I needed it. For my 11th birthday, they gave me a special gift, a beautiful wooden box with my name carved on top. Inside were the few items they had from my birth mother, a small pink blanket I was wrapped in, when they got me a brief letter Karen had written, expressing her wish for me to have a good life, and a silver bracelet with a tiny heart charm. "She wanted you to have this someday," Mum said as I examined the bracelet. The letter was short and impersonal. There was no "I love you." No, "this is the hardest decision I've ever made." just practical sentences about hoping I would have opportunities she couldn't provide. As I entered middle school, my questions became more specific, more probing. Why didn't Karen try to stay in touch? Did she ever ask about me? Could we find her if we wanted to? My parents were always honest but protective. The adoption was closed, Dad explained. That means she chose not to have ongoing contact. But she could have changed her mind, right? I pressed. She could have checked on me. Mum and Dad exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. She could have, Mum acknowledged. But sometimes when people make difficult choices, they feel they need to completely move forward. It might have been too painful for her to stay connected. I nodded like I understood, but inside a small voice whispered, or maybe it was just easier to forget me. Throughout these challenging revelations, my adoptive parents' love never wavered. They supported my curiosity while assuring me of my place in our family. Their steadiness helped me develop a resilience I would later need more than I could have imagined. Despite the complicated emotions swirling inside me, I knew I was fortunate to have James and Margaret Wilson as my mum and dad. By the time I started high school, my curiosity about Karen had evolved into something more urgent. While I loved my adoptive parents deeply, questions about my origins tugged at me constantly. Who did I look like? Where did my curly hair come from? Was my birth mother thinking about me too? One afternoon, when my parents were both at work, I found myself alone in our house with an hour before they'd be home. I hadn't planned it, but I found myself drawn to their home office, specifically to the filing cabinet where they kept important documents. The adoption papers were in a manila folder, labelled simply, Ava. My hands trembled as I pulled them out. Most of the legal language meant nothing to me, but there it was on the second page, Karen Sullivan. My birth mother's full name. I quickly returned everything exactly as I'd found it, and rushed to my room repeating the name in my mind, like a mantra, Karen Sullivan, Karen Sullivan. That evening, after dinner and homework, I sat alone in my room with my laptop. With shaking fingers, I typed Karen Sullivan into the search bar. There were thousands of results. I added Boston, since that's where I was born. Still too many hits. For the next few weeks, I spent every private moment searching. I tried different combinations. Karen Sullivan, nurse mum had mentioned. She thought my birth mother worked in healthcare. Karen Sullivan, Massachusetts. Karen Sullivan, adoption. Just when I was about to give up, I found her. A local newspaper article about a charity fundraiser included a photo caption, Michael and Karen Sullivan of Lexington with their children at Saturday's event. My heart nearly stopped. Lexington was barely 30 miles away. More searching led me to her Facebook profile. It was mostly private, but her profile picture showed her with a man and 2 children in front of a Christmas tree. Everyone was smiling. The perfect family portrait. Karen looked like an older version of me. The same dark curly hair, though hers was shorter and styled. The same heart-shaped face and full lips. Seeing my features reflected in hers sent a shock through my system. According to the limited information visible on her profile, she lived in Lexington with her husband Michael and their children Taylor and Jason. From comments on visible posts, I deduced that Taylor was 12 and Jason was 10. The math hit me like a physical blow. I was 15. Taylor was 12. That meant Karen had given birth to another child just 3 years after giving me up. She hadn't been too young or not ready to be a mother. She just hadn't wanted to be my mother. I cried myself to sleep that night. The next morning at breakfast, my mum noticed my puffy eyes. Honey, what's wrong? Are you feeling okay? I hadn't planned to tell them, but suddenly the words were spilling out. I found her. Karen, my birth mother. She lives in Lexington with her husband and 2 kids. She had another baby right after me. Mum's face paled. Dad put down his coffee cup with a clunk. How did you find her? Dad asked gently. I saw her name on the adoption papers in your office. I'm sorry for snooping. I admitted. Instead of anger, their faces showed concern and something else. Fear. Oh, Ava, Mum said, reaching for my hand. We always knew this day might come. Were you ever going to tell me? I asked. When you turned 18, Dad explained. We wanted you to have all the information, but we also wanted to protect you. Protect me from what? My parents exchanged that look again, the one that said they were deciding how much to share. Sometimes the truth is complicated, Mum said carefully. We didn't want you to be hurt. I need to know everything, I insisted. They told me what little they knew. Yes, Karen had gotten married shortly after giving me up. Yes, she'd had another child relatively quickly. No, she had never inquired about me as far as they knew. Do you think she'd want to meet me? I asked. The worry lines on my parents' foreheads deepened. Sweetheart, Mum said we don't know, but if you want to try to contact her, we'll support you. Just, prepare yourself for any response, or no response. That night, I composed and deleted a dozen messages before finally sending one to Karen through Facebook. Hello, my name is Ava Wilson. I believe you are my birth mother. I was born on May 12, 2003 in Boston. I would really like to meet you if you're open to it. I just want to know where I came from. I have wonderful adoptive parents, so I'm not looking to disrupt your life. Please let me know if you'd be willing to meet sometime. Thank you. Days passed, then weeks. No response. I checked her profile obsessively, noting new family photos she posted: Jason's baseball game, Taylor's dance recital, a family vacation to Disney World. Their perfect life continued uninterrupted by my existence. I alternated between sadness and anger. How could she pretend I didn't exist? How could she just ignore me? The questions consumed me, but I tried not to let them show. I didn't want to worry my parents more than I already had. Looking back now, I realize I was living in a strange limbo, balanced between the security of my adoptive family and the magnetic pull of my biological origins. I didn't know then how drastically everything was about to change, or how much I would come to cherish those final months with James and Margaret Wilson, the only real parents I'd ever known. The morning of my 16th birthday dawned bright and clear. Mum had decorated the kitchen with balloons and a homemade banner. Dad made his famous blueberry pancakes, arranging them with whipped cream and fruit to form the number 16. "Happy birthday, Princess," he said, placing the plate in front of me with a flourish. "We have a surprise for you," Mum announced, her eyes twinkling with excitement. They handed me a small envelope. Inside was a brochure for a lakeside cabin resort in Vermont. "We're taking a family trip this weekend," Dad explained. "Just the three of us. Hiking, canoeing, stargazing, whatever you want. We leave right after school today," Mum added. "Your bag is already packed." I hugged them, both genuinely thrilled. Between school, their work, and my extracurriculars, we hadn't had a proper family vacation in ages. The school day crawled by. When the final bell rang, I raced to the parking lot where Dad was waiting in our blue Honda CR-V, already packed for the trip. Mum sat in the passenger seat, smiling as I approached. "Ready for adventure, birthday girl?" Dad asked as I climbed into the back seat. "Absolutely," I replied, buckling my seatbelt. The first hour of the drive was perfect. Mum had made a playlist of my favourite songs. We sang along to Taylor Swift and debated the merits of different pizza toppings. Dad told corny jokes that made Mum and me groan and laugh simultaneously. "Remember when Ava was 7 and insisted on being a pizza slice for Halloween?" Mum reminisced. "And I spent 3 days figuring out how to make a pizza costume that wouldn't fall apart," Dad has added. "You guys were the best parents a kid could ask for." I said, meaning every word. The moment hangs in my memory like a perfect photograph. Dad's eyes crinkling with laughter in the rearview mirror, Mum turning to smile at me over her shoulder, the afternoon sun streaming through the windows, creating a golden glow inside our car. A perfect moment in a perfect family. Then came the screeching tires, the blaring horn, Dad's sudden shout, "Hold on!" I remember fragments after that. The violent jolt as another vehicle slammed into us. The shattering glass. The world spinning. The strange silence afterward, broken only by the hiss of the deflating airbags and a distant car alarm. I was upside down, still strapped to my seat. Something warm trickled down my forehead. I tried to call out for my parents, but no sound came. Then darkness. I woke up in a hospital room. The steady beep of monitors greeted me before I even opened my eyes. My entire body ached. A bandage wrapped around my head. My left arm was in a cast. A nurse noticed I was awake and rushed over. "Hello, Ava. Try not to move too much, sweetie." "My parents," I whispered, my throat raw. "Where are my parents?" The nurse's face changed. She pressed a button beside my bed. "The doctor will be here in just a moment." I knew then. I knew before the doctor arrived with his solemn face. Before he sat carefully on the edge of my bed. Before he said the words that would divide my life into before and after. "Ava, I'm very sorry to tell you this. Your parents were very badly injured in the accident. The emergency team did everything they could, but..." He paused, meeting my eyes with genuine compassion. "They didn't survive. The world collapsed around me. This couldn't be real. We were going to Vermont. We were celebrating my birthday. Dad had made pancakes shaped like the number 16 that morning. No, I whispered. No, there's a mistake. I'm so sorry, Ba, the doctor repeated. The other driver was intoxicated. He crossed the center line at high speed. Your parents' injuries were too severe. I learned later that my parents had died instantly. The doctor assured me they hadn't suffered, as if that was supposed to comfort me, as if anything could comfort me. I spent 5 days in the hospital recovering from a concussion, broken arm, and various cuts and bruises. My parents' siblings flew in from different states. Aunt Celia, Dad's sister, stayed by my bedside almost constantly. Uncle Robert, Mum's brother, handled the funeral arrangements. The funeral was held on a Thursday. I insisted on attending despite the doctor's concerns. They had me brought in a wheelchair due to my injuries. The church was packed. My parents had been loved by many colleagues, neighbours, friends from college. So many people touched my shoulder and told me how sorry they were. Their words washed over me without sinking in. 2 small urns sat on a table at the front of the church. My strong, vibrant parents reduced to ashes. I couldn't comprehend it. After the service, reality began to set in. Where would I go? Who would take care of me? Aunt Celia lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in Chicago. Uncle Robert had 4 kids of his own in a crowded house in Florida. There were cousins and more distant relatives, but no one who could easily take in a traumatized teenager. We'll figure something out, Aunt Celia assured me, but I could see the worry in her eyes. A social worker named Ms. Patel visited me in the hospital the day after the funeral. She spoke gently about options and temporary arrangements. Foster care was mentioned. That night alone in my hospital room, I made a decision. If I was going to be placed with strangers anyway, there was one person I needed to try first. I want to contact my birth mother, I told Ms. Patel the next morning. Her eyebrows rose in surprise. You know who she is? Yes, her name is Karen Sullivan. She lives in Lexington with her husband and 2 children. Ms. Patel made some notes. I'll see what I can do, but Ava, please understand that biological parents who've terminated their rights aren't legally obligated to take responsibility for their children. I know, I said, but she should at least have to look me in the eye when she says no. My parents had left me well provided for financially. Their life insurance policies named me as beneficiary, and they had a college fund set aside for me. The money would be managed by a trust until I turned 18, but there was enough to hire a private investigator to find Karen's exact address and contact information. Within a week, we had what we needed. Karen Sullivan lived in a colonial-style home in an upscale Lexington neighborhood. She was a pediatric nurse at a prestigious Boston hospital. Her husband, Michael, was a financial advisor. They had 2 children, Taylor 12 and Jason 10. They appeared to be the picture of suburban success. Ms. Patel arranged the meeting. She called Karen to explain the situation and request that she meet with me. To my surprise, Karen agreed. The day we drove to Lexington was sunny and mild. I sat in the back seat of Ms. Patel's car, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my chest. I was about to meet the woman who gave me life, then gave me away, Ms. Patel parked in front of a beautiful 2-story house with perfectly manicured flower beds and a large oak tree in the front yard. A shiny SUV sat in the driveway. Wind chimes tinkled gently from the porch. It looked like something from a magazine spread on perfect American homes. Are you ready? Ms. Patel asked softly. I nodded, though I wasn't sure anyone could be truly ready for this moment. My arm was still in a cast, and I moved slowly as I got out of the car. We walked up the stone path to the front door. Ms. Patel rang the bell. I held my breath. The door opened, and there she was. Karen Sullivan, my birth mother. It was like looking at an older version of myself, the same dark curly hair, though hers was expertly styled, while mine hung limply after days of minimal care. The same heart-shaped face and full lips. The same brown eyes now widening in shock as she took me in. You must be Karen, Ms. Patel said professionally. I'm Diane Patel from Social Services. We spoke on the phone. And this is Ava. Karen seemed frozen for a moment. Then she stepped back mechanically. Please come in. The interior of the house was as perfect as the exterior. Hardwood floors gleamed. Family photos lined the walls, all professionally taken. A grand piano sat in the corner of the living room. My husband will be joining us, Karen said stiffly. He's just putting our son down for a nap. I noticed her emphasis on our son, as if to distinguish him from me, the daughter who didn't belong in this perfect home. We sat awkwardly in the living room. I could feel Karen stealing glances at me when she thought I wasn't looking. "Can I get you anything water tea?" She offered, her hostess manners kicking in despite the unusual circumstances. Before we could answer, a tall man with sandy hair entered the room. He had a confused, concerned expression. This must be Michael, Karen's husband. "Honey," he said, looking questioningly at Karen, then at us. Karen stood abruptly. "Michael, this is Ms. Patel from Social Services, and this is Ava." Michael's confusion didn't clear. "I'm sorry, who did you say this was?" The realization hit me like another car crash. He didn't know about me. Karen had never told her husband about the baby she gave up. Ms. Patel seemed to realize it too. She glanced at Karen, who had gone pale. "Mr. Sullivan," Ms. Patel began carefully, "Ava is Karen's biological daughter. She was placed for adoption 16 years ago." Michael's jaw literally dropped. He stared at his wife in disbelief. "What? You have another daughter? You were pregnant before we met." Karen's hands twisted together nervously. "It was a long time ago, Michael, before us. I was going to tell you, but then it never seemed like the right time, and then so much time had passed." 16 years. Michael's voice rose. "We've been married 14 years, and you never found the right time in 14 years. I sat there watching my birth mother's perfect life begin to crack. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt empty." Ms. Patel cleared her throat. "Perhaps we should focus on the immediate situation. Ava has recently lost both her adoptive parents in a car accident. She has no other family able to take her in. We're exploring all options before placing her in foster care." Karen's eyes snapped back to me, really seeing me for the first time since we'd arrived. Taking in the cast on my arm, the fading bruise on my cheek, the grief etched into my face. "You want us to take her?" Karen asked, her voice rising with panic. The blunt question hurt more than I expected. I'd prepared myself for rejection, but the immediate panic in her voice cut deep. "We're asking if you'd be willing to consider it," Ms. Patel corrected gently. "Ava is still your biological child." Michael had moved to the window, staring out at the yard, his back to us. The silence stretched uncomfortably. "We don't have room," Karen finally said. "We only have 3 bedrooms. Taylor and Jason each have their own rooms." "I don't need much space," I said, speaking for the first time since entering the house. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Karen avoided looking directly at me. "It would confuse our children. They don't know about any of this." "They're old enough to understand," Michael said quietly from the window. He turned around. "Karen, we can't just send her away. Look at her." For a moment I felt a surge of hope. Maybe Michael would advocate for me. Maybe there was a chance. Karen stood up and pulled Michael into the hallway. They spoke in hushed voices, but I could still hear them. "This is not a good time," Karen hissed. "Jason is having trouble at school. Taylor just made the competitive dance team. We can't afford another child." "She's your daughter," Michael replied, "and she's just lost her parents. How can you even consider turning her away?" "I gave her up for a reason," Karen insisted. "I made that decision 16 years ago. I can't just take it back now because her adoptive parents died. That's not fair." "Fair." Michael's voice rose again. "What's not fair is that this girl is sitting in our living room after losing everything, and you're worried about dance team schedules." They returned to the living room. Karen's face was flushed, Michael's jaw tight. "We need some time to discuss this," Karen said to Ms. Patel. Then she turned to me, finally meeting my eyes. "I'm sorry about your parents, truly, but this is very sudden." "It was sudden for me too," I replied, surprising myself with my calm tone. One minute we were driving to Vermont for my birthday, and the next minute I was an orphan. Karen flinched at the word orphan. Michael stepped forward. "Ava, regardless of what we decide about living arrangements, I hope you'll stay in touch with us. Your family, even if—" Karen cut him off sharply. "Even if the timing is difficult." He finished, giving his wife a hard look. As we prepared to leave, Karen pulled Ms. Patel aside for a private word. I stood in the entryway studying a family photo on the wall. Karen, Michael, Taylor, and Jason at a beach. All smiling, all belonging to each other. I wondered if Karen ever thought about me on family vacations, if she ever looked at Taylor and saw traces of me in her daughter's face, if she ever felt a mother's instinct to wonder where I was, if I was happy, if I was loved. As we walked back to the car, Ms. Patel's phone rang. She answered it, had a brief conversation, then turned to me with a sympathetic expression. That was Karen, she said. She wanted me to tell you that after discussing it, they've decided they can't take you in. Yeah. I nodded, unsurprised but still devastated. Did she say why? Ms. Patel hesitated. She said, and I quote, I gave her up for a reason. I'm sorry about her parents, but she's not my responsibility. The words hit like physical blows. Not my responsibility, not my child, not my problem. As we drove away from the perfect house with the perfect family, I realized I truly had no one left in the world who was obligated to love me. The parents who had chosen me were gone. The mother who gave birth to me had rejected me twice. I was 16 years old and I was completely alone. The next 2 years were a blur of adjustment and survival. I entered the foster care system with nothing but a suitcase of clothes and a heart full of grief. My first placement was with the Thompsons, an older couple who fostered because they wanted to give back. They were kind enough, but clearly uncomfortable with a teenager, especially one processing profound loss. I shared a room with another girl named Destiny, who had been in foster care since she was 8. She taught me the unwritten rules: don't get attached, don't leave your stuff unattended, always have a backup plan. Foster homes are temporary, she told me matter-of-factly. Even the good ones. People say they want to help, but teenagers are too much trouble. They prefer cute little kids. Her cynicism was jarring, but I soon understood its roots. After 4 months with the Thompsons, I was moved to another home because they were better suited to younger children. My second placement lasted 6 months before that family moved to another state and couldn't take me with them. Through it all, I clung to education as my lifeline. School had always been my strength, and now it became my salvation. While my home life was chaotic, my grades remained perfect. My teachers became my allies, especially Ms. Ramirez, my guidance counselor. Your circumstances don't define you, Ava, she told me during one of our regular check-ins. Your response to them does. I got a part-time job at a local coffee shop, saving every penny I could. The trust from my parents' insurance and savings wouldn't be available until I turned 18, but knowing it was there gave me hope for college. Ms. Ramirez helped me apply for scholarships. You have a compelling story, Bear, she said as we worked on application essays, and the grades and test scores to back it up. You're going to have options. She was right. By the spring of my senior year, I had been accepted to 5 universities, all with substantial scholarship offers. I chose Northeastern University in Boston. It offered an excellent social work program and was close enough that I could maintain the few relationships I'd managed to build. The day I moved out of my third foster home and into my college dorm was bittersweet. I had no family to help me carry boxes or decorate my room. No tearful mum fussing over whether I had enough sweaters. No dad giving me a bear hug and slipping me extra spending money. My roommate Lisa arrived with her parents and younger brother. They'd rented a minivan to bring all her belongings. When her mother saw me arranging my minimal possessions alone, she immediately adopted me. Honey, you can't possibly have enough pillows, she declared, pulling extras from their abundant supply. And where's your desk lamp? Don't worry, we brought a spare. Lisa's family invited me to join them for dinner that night. Sitting at a restaurant table, surrounded by their easy laughter and genuine concern, I felt something crack inside me. These strangers were showing me more care in one day than Karen had in 16 years. Are you okay, dear? Lisa's mum asked, noticing my sudden tears. It's been a long time since I sat at a table with a family, I admitted. Lisa's dad reached over and patted my hand. Well, you're welcome at our table anytime. College life suited me. The structure, the clear expectations, the meritocracy of it all. For the first time since losing my parents, I felt I had some control over my life. I declared a major in social work, determined to help children like myself navigate the system. My graduation day was sunny and perfect. As I sat among thousands of fellow graduates in my cap and gown, I felt both pride and profound loneliness. I had no family section to wave to, no one to take photos with afterward. But then I heard cheering from the stands. I looked up to see Ms. Ramirez waving wildly. Next to her was Destiny from my first foster home, now a college freshman herself. And there was Lisa and her family holding a homemade sign, "We're proud of you, Ava." My chosen family, not bound by blood, but by something perhaps more powerful choice. My first job after college was with New Beginnings, a non-profit focused on family reunification and supporting adoptees and foster youth. The irony wasn't lost on me, but it felt right. I understood both sides of the equation in ways many of my colleagues couldn't. By 25, I had built a stable, if solitary, life. I had my own apartment, a career I found meaningful, and friends who cared about me. I had learned to navigate holidays and special occasions that emphasized family, creating my own traditions and celebrations. I dated occasionally, but found it difficult to truly let people in. The double abandonment of my birth mother and the tragic loss of my adoptive parents had left scars that made intimacy challenging. I was working on it in therapy, but it was a slow process. Karen Sullivan remained a shadow in my mind. I had stopped actively thinking about her, but she appeared in my dreams sometimes. I'd wake up with a hollow feeling in my chest, a sense of unfinished business. I didn't know then that our paths were about to cross again in a way I never could have anticipated. 4 years after college graduation, on an ordinary Tuesday in April, I was at my desk reviewing case files when an email notification popped up on my screen. The sender's name stopped my heart for a moment, Taylor Sullivan. Subject line: Finding my sister. I stared at it for a full minute before finding the courage to open it. Dear Ava, my name is Taylor Sullivan. I believe you are my half-sister. This might come as a shock, but I recently discovered your existence through old photos and documents I found while helping my mother move after her divorce. I confronted my mother, and after much discussion, she told me everything. I want you to know that Jason and I never knew about you until now. We had no idea our mother had another child before us. I understand that you reached out to our family when you were 16 and had lost your adoptive parents. I am deeply sorry for how you were treated. There is no excuse for turning away family in need, especially someone who had suffered such a terrible loss. I know this is extremely presumptuous of me, but I would very much like to meet you. I've spent 24 years not knowing I had a sister, and I'd like the chance to know you now if you're willing. Please know that this is entirely my initiative. Mum knows I'm contacting you, but this isn't her attempting to reconcile through me. This is about you and me and the sibling relationship we never got to have. If you're open to it, perhaps we could meet for coffee somewhere, public and neutral. Sincerely, Taylor Sullivan. I read the email 3 times, trying to process what it meant. Karen was divorced. Taylor knew about me now, and she wanted to meet me. My first instinct was to delete the email and pretend I'd never seen it. The wound of Karen's rejection had scarred over. Why reopen it? But curiosity nagged at me. What had prompted Taylor to search for me now? What else might I learn about my biological family? I waited 3 days before responding. Taylor, thank you for reaching out. This was indeed unexpected. I appreciate your honesty about the circumstances. I would be willing to meet for coffee. There's a cafe called Groundwork on Newbury Street that would work as a neutral location. Does Saturday at 10 a.m. work for you, Ava? We set the date. As Saturday approached, my anxiety mounted. I changed my outfit 6 times that morning, unsure what impression I wanted to make. I arrived at the cafe 20 minutes early and chose a table in the corner where I could see the door. At precisely 10 a.m., a young woman entered. I recognized her immediately from the family photos I'd seen years ago, though she was now an adult. Taylor had Karen's curly hair, though hers was lighter, more auburn than dark brown. She had the same heart-shaped face we both shared. Our half-sister. She scanned the cafe nervously until her eyes landed on me. Recognition flickered across her face, followed by a tentative smile. She walked over. Ava? She asked unnecessarily. We both knew who the other was. I stood. Yes, Taylor. We shook hands awkwardly, then sat. Neither of us seemed to know what to do with our hands, our eyes, our words. I got here early and already ordered a coffee, I said, gesturing to my half-empty cup. But please get something if you'd like. I'm too nervous to eat or drink anything right now, Taylor admitted with a small laugh. This is surreal. You look so much like Mum, like me. I noticed that too, I said. The family resemblance was undeniable. I don't even know where to start, Taylor said. I have so many questions, but I also realize I have no right to ask them. Why don't you start by telling me how you found out about me, I suggested. Taylor nodded gratefully. Mum and Dad divorced last year. It was ugly. Dad had been having an affair with his assistant for years, apparently. Mum was devastated. She sold the house in Lexington and bought a condo in Cambridge. I was helping her pack when I found a box of old papers in the attic. She paused, gathering her thoughts. There were hospital records from before I was born. Photos of Mum pregnant, but the dates didn't match up with either my birth or Jason's. And there was a copy of adoption papers with your name on them. I tried to imagine the shock of such a discovery. That must have been confusing. I confronted Mum immediately. She tried to evade the question at first, but eventually she broke down and told me everything. About giving you up, about never telling Dad, about you showing up after your adoptive parents died. Taylor's eyes welled with tears. I was so angry with her, Ava. I still am. Jason too. We can't understand how she could have turned you away when you needed family the most. I swallowed hard. What reason did she give? Taylor looked down at her hands. She said Dad had always been very clear that he wanted a clean slate when they got married. No complications, no baggage. She'd never told him about you because she was afraid he'd leave, and when you showed up, she was terrified of losing everything. So she chose her perfect family over me, I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. The perfect family was an illusion, Taylor said sadly. Dad was controlling and unfaithful. Mum was constantly anxious about keeping up appearances. Jason and I grew up walking on eggshells. It looked perfect from the outside, but it wasn't. We talked for over 2 hours. Taylor told me about her life growing up, about studying nursing like our mother, about her current job at a pediatric clinic. I shared selective details about my adoptive parents, my time in foster care, and my career helping children in similar situations. As we prepared to leave, Taylor hesitated. There's something else you should know. Mum has been following your career. I stared at her in surprise. What? After I found out about you, I did some online searching. It wasn't hard to find you given your unique name and profession. When I mentioned to Mum that I'd found your professional profile, she admitted she'd been keeping tabs on you for years. She has a file with newspaper clippings about your college scholarships, your work with New Beginnings. I felt dizzy. All these years, Karen had been watching me from afar, not reaching out, not offering help, just observing. She wants to see you, Taylor said quietly. She wouldn't ask me to tell you that, but I know she does. She talks about you more now, especially since the divorce. I think losing her marriage made her reevaluate her choices. I don't know if I'm ready for that, I said honestly. I understand. Just know that if you ever want to meet her, I could help arrange it. No pressure, no expectations. We parted with a tentative hug and a promise to stay in touch. As I walked home, my mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Anger at Karen's continued selfishness. Curiosity about the woman who had been secretly following my life. Fear of reopening wounds that had finally begun to heal. But there was something else too, a sense that perhaps the only way to truly move forward was to confront the past. Not for Karen's sake, but for my own. After a week of deliberation and 2 sessions with my therapist, I emailed Taylor, I'm ready to meet Karen, just once, for closure. We agreed to meet at a quiet restaurant on a Sunday afternoon. My therapist had helped me prepare for this encounter, but as the day approached, my anxiety mounted. What did I want from this meeting? What could Karen possibly say that would make any difference? Now I chose my outfit carefully, a professional grey dress and blazer that made me feel armoured and competent. I arrived early, as was my habit, and requested a booth in the back where we could speak privately. Taylor had offered to come for moral support, but I declined. This needed to be between Karen and me. I saw her the moment she walked in. Karen Sullivan, my birth mother now in her late 40s. She looked older than I remembered, with fine lines around her eyes and strands of grey in her dark curls. She wore a simple blue dress and minimal jewellery. She scanned the restaurant nervously until the hostess pointed her toward my table. As she approached, I noticed she walked with slight hesitation, as if she might turn and flee at any moment. I remained seated, unwilling to stand to greet her. Ava, she said softly when she reached the table. Thank you for agreeing to meet me. I nodded stiffly. Please sit down. She slid into the booth across from me. For a moment, we just looked at each other. It was still startling to see my features reflected in hers. The same eyes, the same mouth, the same hands, now fidgeting with a napkin. You look well, she offered tentatively. I am well, I replied. No thanks to you. She flinched but didn't protest the barb. The waiter came to take our drink orders, providing a momentary reprieve from the tension. Karen ordered white wine. I chose water. How much has Taylor told you? Karen asked when the waiter left. About your divorce, enough. About why you abandoned me twice, also enough. Karen looked down. I deserve that. I deserve your anger. This isn't about what you deserve, I said. It's about me understanding what happened so I can move forward with my life. She nodded slowly. Where would you like me to start? The beginning, I said. Why did you really give me up, and don't tell me you were too young or not ready? You had Taylor just 3 years later. Karen took a deep breath. I was 20 when I had you. Your biological father was my college boyfriend. When I told him I was pregnant, he left. Completely disappeared. Changed his phone number, transferred schools, everything. The waiter returned with our drinks. Karen took a sip of wine before continuing. My parents were very religious and very strict. When they found out I was pregnant and unmarried, they gave me an ultimatum: get an abortion, which they opposed, but considered the lesser sin, or move out and never return. I couldn't afford to live on my own with a baby, and I couldn't bear the thought of an abortion. Adoption seemed like the only option. So you chose the easy way out, I said flatly. It wasn't easy, Ava. Giving you up was the hardest thing I've ever done. But yes, it was easier than the alternatives. Upgang. She looked me directly in the eyes for the first time. I was a coward. I've always been a coward. And 3 years later, what changed? I met Michael my senior year of college. He came from a wealthy family. He was charming, ambitious, and very clear about wanting a traditional family with a wife who would focus on raising their children. He seemed like security, like safety. So you just forgot about me. I couldn't keep the hurt from my voice. Karen shook her head, tears forming in her eyes. I never forgot you, never, but Michael made it clear he wanted a woman with no complications. He asked me once if I had any serious past relationships, and I lied. I was afraid of losing him, afraid of being alone. By the time I realized what kind of man he really was, we were married with 2 children. And 16 years later, when I showed up needing help, Karen's face crumpled. There's no excuse for what I did to you then, Ava. None. I can tell you I was protecting my children, that I was afraid Michael would leave, if he knew that I panicked. All of that is true, but none of it justifies turning away a child who had just lost everything. She wiped tears from her cheeks. The moment you left that day, I hated myself. I've hated myself every day since. But not enough to reach out to me, I pointed out. Taylor says you've been keeping tabs on me for years. You knew where I was. You could have contacted me at any time. I told myself you were better off without me in your life, that I would only bring you pain. Maybe that was just another excuse. More cowardice. Karen's hands trembled as she raised her wine glass again. The truth is, I didn't know how to face what I'd done. It was easier to watch you from a distance and tell myself you were doing fine without me. We ordered food neither of us really wanted and continued talking. Karen told me about her failed marriage, about Michael's controlling behavior that had isolated her from friends and family, about his infidelity that had finally given her the courage to leave. I'm not telling you this to make you feel sorry for me, she insisted. I made my choices, but losing everything I thought I was building helped me see how wrong those choices were, especially with you. I listened without offering absolution. My therapist had warned me against the urge to comfort her, to make this easier for her. This wasn't about Karen's healing, it was about mine. When the meal was finished and the plates cleared away, I finally asked the question that had been burning inside me for years. Did you ever love me, even for a moment? Karen's eyes filled with fresh tears. Yes. From the moment I felt you move inside me, when they placed you in my arms at the hospital, I almost changed my mind about the adoption. You were so beautiful, so perfect. The nurse had to take you away because I couldn't stop crying. She reached into her purse and pulled out a worn photograph. This is the only picture I have of us together. The adoption agency gave me a copy. She slid it across the table. A much younger Karen held a newborn wrapped in a pink blanket, looking down at the tiny face with an expression of mingled love and sorrow. I kept this hidden all these years. When I was alone, I would look at it and wonder where you were, if you were happy, if you ever thought of me. I stared at the photo, feeling a strange disconnect. That tiny baby was me, but I had no memory of that moment, no emotional connection to it. My real memories were of Margaret Wilson rocking me during thunderstorms, of James Wilson teaching me to ride a bike, of the 3 of us building sandcastles on Cape Cod. I slid the photo back across the table. My parents, my real parents, loved me every day, not just when it was convenient, not just when no one was watching. They chose me, protected me, and would have done anything for me. Karen nodded, accepting the rebuke. They sound like wonderful people. I'm glad you had them for as long as you did. What do you want from me, Karen? I asked directly. Why did you agree to this meeting? She seemed surprised by the question. I don't expect anything from you, Ava. Not forgiveness, not a relationship, nothing. I just thought I thought you deserved the truth and the opportunity to ask any questions you might have, to say anything you need to say to me. I considered this. Did I have anything else to ask? Anything else to say? I built a life without you, I finally said. It wasn't easy. There were times I thought I wouldn't survive the pain and loneliness. Times I cried myself to sleep wondering why my own mother didn't want me. But I did survive. I built a career helping children who feel as lost as I once did. I created a chosen family who love me by choice, not obligation. I leaned forward, making sure she heard every word. I don't need you in my life, Karen. I haven't needed you for a long time. But I'm willing to consider occasional contact. Maybe an email now and then. Coffee every few months. I'd like to know Taylor better and Jason too if he's interested. But we will never have a mother-daughter relationship. That ship sailed 16 years ago when you closed your door on me. Karen nodded, tears streaming freely now. That's more than I deserve. Thank you. As we prepared to leave, Karen hesitated. There's one more thing. I know it's far too late, but I want you to know I'm sorry, Ava. Truly sorry for all the pain I caused you. If I could go back and make different choices, I would. But you can't, I said simply. None of us can. We parted without hugging. Karen handed me her contact information on a slip of paper, which I tucked into my purse without comment. As I watched her walk to her car, shoulders slumped, I felt a strange sense of lightness. Not forgiveness exactly, but perhaps the first step towards something like peace. In the months that followed, I did exchange occasional emails with Karen. Brief updates about work, impersonal but civil. I met Taylor regularly for coffee and eventually met Jason as well. My half-siblings and I began building tentative relationships, discovering shared traits and interests. Karen and I met for coffee once more 6 months after our first meeting. The conversation was easier, less charged with emotion. We wouldn't ever be close, but the sharp edges of my anger had begun to soften. One afternoon, I was counseling a 12-year-old girl who had recently been adopted after years in foster care. She was struggling to trust her new parents, afraid they would send her away if she misbehaved. How do I know they really want me? She asked, her small face pinched with worry. How do I know they won't change their minds? I thought carefully before answering. Family isn't just about who gives birth to you or whose DNA you share. Real family is about who stays, who chooses you every day, even when it's difficult. Your adoptive parents chose you, and they keep choosing you. Did someone choose you? She asked with a child's directness. I smiled. Yes, my parents chose me. And even though they're gone now, their love stays with me. And I've learnt to choose myself too, to build my own definition of family. That evening, I looked at the photo of James and Margaret Wilson that sat on my bedside table. Thank you for choosing me, I whispered. The next morning, I sent a text to Taylor, brunch on Sunday, bring Karen if she's free. It wasn't forgiveness, not completely, but it was a step forward on my own terms. Not for Karen's sake, but for mine, because I had finally realized that healing doesn't always look like forgiveness. Sometimes it looks like understanding. Sometimes it just looks like letting go of what might have been and embracing what is. I would never have the mother I deserved, but I had become a woman who could face the past without being defined by it. A woman who could build bridges instead of walls. A woman who understood that family comes in many forms, and the most important one is the one we create for ourselves. Have you ever had to redefine what family means to you, or found yourself building a bridge to someone who hurt you in the past? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. Sometimes sharing our journeys helps others find their path to healing. And if this story resonated with you, please hit like and subscribe to join our community of survivors and thrivers. Remember, your worth is not determined by those who left, but by the strength you found in their absence. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find peace in whatever family looks like for you.